I think it's harder for me to deal with. Like, I am sick and going through a lot of difficult times. I can't deal with my mother crying and worrying. Then now I have to be responsible for, making her feel better. I just couldn't do that.
That was the voice of Claire Kwon. I met Claire a few years ago in one of our programs, and right away, with our first conversation, I just knew Claire was somebody I was going to get along with really well. I am completely honored and stunned, frankly, that Claire joined us and wanted to have this conversation with us. It's a really, really good and important and hard topic to discuss. And throughout the conversation, we talk about Claire's experience of having cancer and the choices that she's made to share that information with her family, both the family that she was born with and the family that she has chosen. And it's a deep and insightful conversation about what we do to protect ourselves and what we do to protect our loved ones and what we do to make sure that we have the support that we need throughout life experiences and the ramifications of those choices. And what can I say, but it's just something that I'm very, very thankful and honored that Claire was decided to share it with us here on the podcast. So that being said, let's just get to it, and I want to introduce you to the lovely Claire Kwon. You're in Los Angeles. How is Los Angeles these days? 2.5 years into a pandemic. I haven't been for a long time. How's LA doing?
LA's fine. I think traffic is sort of back to normal, like since pandemic started after like 6 to 8 months. So it's still bad. Me, I don't deal with it because thanks to pandemic that I work from home and that's the company policy. So I don't deal with traffics anymore. But the interesting thing is I moved to a new neighborhood during pandemic and I still don't know my neighborhood very well because I don't go outside. That I'm mostly home.
Right. And LA is such a kind of city that requires you to really make an effort to go out to see people even.
Interesting thing about LA is that LA is not a city. Like if you're thinking about city in terms of urban planning, like in old city like New York, that it's there, you can go different places and it's on the way that you do something. But LA is a collection of suburbs. There's no real city, so that you only move from point A to point B. You don't actually know what's between point A and B. So it's like a point to point all the time. So even though you lived in LA for such a long time, that there are so many places that I have no idea what's there or who lives there.
Right. And I think a lot of the point A to B is to mitigate traffic. It's to find an alternate route to get out of a car. Right. Oh, so fascinating. I definitely don't miss that part of Los Angeles. LA is such a funny place, but we're really not here to chat about LA. I'm curious. What are we going to start with today? What are we going to chat about today?
I can share some major big event that influenced me as a person and a persona in professional world too. That really changed how I work, how I live, and what has changed in relation with others, like families, strangers, friends.
Wow. Okay. So big events. May I ask, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah. So 8 years ago I just came back from a wonderful birthday celebration trip to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And then, health check was due. So I went in and did the thing, and they required some other exams that I need to go through, that we suspect certain things, but don't know still. And people were really positive because you don't think you're going to get sick. Like, that's, I think, a basic understanding or expectation of anybody, that you don't expect that you're going to get sick. So went through several exams and more stuff, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So that's not in my life plan. That's not in anybody's life plan.
Right.
So then I would, first I thought, oh, it's okay. So what can I do now? So, and then, they were talking about, it's like the interesting thing about cancer is you really don't know, because you need to do surgery first and then check the grade of cancer, and then you're going to have the next plan of action. So there is no real, like, you can't really plan it out, which sort of drove me crazy because I'm a planner and this doesn't work for me already. So luckily the hospital staff was like moving really fast. So like 1 month after like diagnosed, and then within 2 weeks we got a schedule with a lot of doctors that's going to do the surgery. So it was all good. And I was so naive that not thinking about the impact of what it means. I thought like, okay, if you do surgery, then everything is going to be fine. So I only took like a week off from work.
Wow.
So I went into surgery, was in a hospital for several days, and came back. And the next day I said, okay, so now I will work. So, but I was actually working with the one hand because the surgery was done on my right side. It was mastectomy. So my arms, like there was a big scar in the back and I couldn't really move.
That's
so
major surgery.
I know.
Major surgery. Oh my gosh.
So I was typing with like one finger in a keyboard and trying to work, and it was hard. So 1 week off and then 1 week work from home, and I went back to work, which is crazy.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I want to, this is 8 years ago. Yep. How's your health now? Maybe let's start from there. And then I want to unpack those few weeks. How are you doing right now?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm just dealing with general fatigue because I don't think that this is from cancer. This is from just working certain hours. But you can see how I viewed my work. That it's just like I gotta go and do these things and making sure things needs to be done. So I was going through that, and then in the meanwhile that I'm meeting with like other doctors, that there's oncologists and other things. So I had to went through all the things. So I had like sessions of chemotherapy because in cancer land, I was so young to have like unusual, and I don't have a family history. So that it's better to do this. So sessions of chemos, and then other like 28 sessions of this laser treatment too. That was hard. So, but I also work while I was getting chemo.
Oh my gosh. So I want to, you mentioned that you're a planner. So like in my head, I'm going, well, you have a to-do list or you have some type of plan. Did you go into your plan and just like add another line?
Yeah.
Deal with cancer.
Yes.
You did. Okay.
Yeah. So, I picked the chemo day, like, I think it was every 2 weeks, and then put it as like days with these meetings, and then told the team that I can't go to client meetings on these these days. So I kind of scheduled it that way. And then after chemo, then I had a 1 month break, and then I'll go to the next treatment, which is going to be 28 sessions of this.
Oh my gosh! So
things. I know,
Claire. I'm fascinated because fascinated maybe isn't the right word. I want to better understand what it was like to be in that room and get the first initial concern. What was going through your brain? What were you feeling? What were those 2 weeks like? You mentioned that 2-week process of where I'm a planner. This is just a routine check. We get some news, and then you have 2 weeks of where you're really kind of sitting with ambiguity. And probably as a planner, but maybe there's some other stuff there too. That how were those 2 weeks? How was it for you for that time that you got diagnosed and then just waiting out without really knowing for those 2 weeks?
I think at that point, my real focus was that there was no moment of sadness at that time, during the time, because it's just natural attitude to a lot of things that, okay, here's the situation, let's go deal with it. And then these are the people actually managing a team of medical staff, like it's like a project management with these people. So what's the timeline? How can we get this? And how long is it? So your background of like dealing with project managers, you're simply going, what's the return on investment of this 2-week process? And then maybe we've talked about this before, you're Gen X. So it may be that sort of Gen X angsty, I'm just going to power through, right? I'm just going to kind of do this. Oh my gosh. So did you tell anybody? I really didn't. And I think, and then before the surgery, like a day before surgery or the weekend before surgery, I sent an email to a very close friends here and just, gave them a brief. This is what's going to happen to me. So just letting you know so that you don't get any surprises at the end. So I did that, and so everybody was really supportive, and you may not know, but you may need our help for anything, but it's personal. So if you don't want to see anybody, that's fine. But if you need anything, we're all here, which was like really wonderful. And my best friend from grad school, she lives in a different town. And then she called me, and I was at work. She called me. So I got her call. It was like during the work hours, and we don't call each other during work hours. And she's a workaholic too. And then she just said, Claire, and there was a silence, and I can hear she was crying. Because her other childhood friend just went through the same process. So she was crying. So I was, in a way, I felt very supported. And then there are some people who came to the hospital in my recovery room, and people were in tears too, but I wasn't really like so sad about it. But that really made me feel good in a weird way, that I am blessed. I am happy. You're not my family, you're your friends, but you really love me. That was a really good. But and then I told my brother who lives in Korea. He's an older brother, but he's like me. So I told him that I'm not going to tell our parents about this, because I have I left home like 20 years ago. So
Mm,
we only get to see like in person every 2 years or something. And
mm,
then I talk to them every week through Skype. So we talk, but in-person meeting is not quite frequent. And
mm,
since I left, my mom like misses me so much, but she doesn't want me to feel that, like, she want me to be happy and focus on what I
mm,
do though. So she won't say things like, you should live with us and you should have never left it, because she doesn't get into that. But instead, she embellishes her memory about my childhood and always talk about how wonderful I was, which is not true. So
No, you weren't wonderful. You weren't the golden child.
I was a good kid, but there are like major things about how she describes me. Is one example is
Mm,
like I was like second grade or something. One day I woke up and it was like so bright. So you feel something's wrong. Like, why is it so bright? Because I have to
mm,
go to school. So I checked and I think it was like 10 a.m. or something like that. So I'm super late for school. So I was crying and uh, went out and like crying and yelling at my mother, like, why did you not wake me up? I'm late for
mm.
school. And my mother said, your lunchbox is ready in front of your room at the door, and you're going to school. I am not going to school because I already finished the elementary school. So
Mm.
it's why is it me on me that you're the one who needs to go to school, which is very true, but it's really brutal for second
Well,
grade.
culturally, like an American parent would never let that happen. An
I've
American
never heard.
parent
Yeah, I would never
would
heard
probably.
any.
Yeah.
I've never heard about anybody had that experience. So since then, so I went to school with that lunchbox because my mom said like my job is to provide this because you can't cook. So I went to school shameful because you have to walk
Mm,
into a classroom and that you're late, and it's a big shame for a young kid. So what I did the next day is that I would put an alarm clock next to my bed, one in front of the door, one in the desk, so that in like 5 minutes difference. So I would always wake up without my mother or anyone else. So that's how I, lived afterwards. And the way my mother describes like, you're so on point for everything and independent. Like your brother, I had to spend so much time making him get ready for school, and sometimes I had to run with him to catch the school bus and all these stories. Like, but I've never had to do that for you. It's like, Mom, because this is what you
right.
did.
I mean, did you have that conversation with your mom?
Yeah,
And
yeah, and
but
she
also
doesn't
like
remember.
there's like older child, younger child dynamics, all sorts of weird dynamics. When your mom mentioned how much she helped your brother,
Hmm.
where did your brain go? Did you go, what?
I know.
You helped my brother and you told me it was on me as a 8-year-old to go do my own thing? Oh my gosh.
I,
Um,
I, I
I,
think my
I could
mother
see
learned
now
her
why
lesson. Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say maybe this is the beginning of you being a planner. Is the lunchbox episode of 1983 or
Yeah.
something like this? Yeah, but also, so your parents and your brother are still in Korea. Yes.
Yep, they are.
Okay, and your mom doesn't really maybe share the same thoughts or talk to you in the same way that perhaps your best friend did
Hmm. Hmm.
when they called. Um, that's there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot to think about, and your original diagnosis was 8 years ago. Yeah. It's been 8 years. How have you talked about it with your family since then?
It's the same. So, told my brother and told I don't want to share it with my parents, because knowing that how my mother glorifies me as like such a precious child, that the way she's gonna, process the information is that she's gonna pass out. She's gonna blame herself because
she doesn't know.
She doesn't know.
Your mom doesn't know.
Your mom doesn't know. So, and I also told my brother, like, don't tell your wife, because if you do, that she's going to tell mom. So my brother kept it just to himself, and he agreed.
So, oh my gosh, Claire. So 8 years later, your mom still doesn't know about this very traumatic, significant event that has gone through your life. And you've asked your brother to hold a secret for you so that you're not the only one. I'm fascinated in the sense of your mom might have a hard time hearing about it. And yet, do you think your mom would want to know?
No. And
you don't think so?
No. I mean, I think it's more problematic if she finds out later, because then she's really going to blame herself. So too late.
So now we've right. There's only later. There's only this extension of, well, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse the longer it draws out, and it's already been 8 years. What does that do for you? That's a lot to carry for you, Claire.
Yep.
Yeah. How are you managing that? How are you holding that?
I think when people in a way share they are sick, it is because they want a lot of mental support so that you can get through this, that there are people who are supporting. And I think I have enough people who care about me, so I do have a strong support there. So my mom doesn't know about it, is I think better. I think it's harder for me to deal with. Like, I am sick and going through a lot of difficult times. I can't deal with my mother crying and worrying. Then now I have to be responsible for, making her feel better. I just couldn't do that. And because that's another thing to do. I wasn't I didn't think that I wanted to do that to begin with. It was probably too much.
Right. And in essence, you're still choosing to have support, but you have like a chosen family, if you will, your friends, those that are very close to you. You're choosing to get support, which is important. And also, in this case, maybe also choosing where you want to put your energy, to remain as healthy as you can with a very significant illness. So let's switch over to that. Let's talk about how you, over the last 8 years, have balanced. How have you been honoring yourself, supporting yourself, whether it's at work, whether it's with your friends, your relationships? How has that changed your approach to a lot of these things that previous to that were very planned?
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of planned, now, well, I have a really amazing, a lot of great friends here.
Mm.
And I, you're gonna laugh. I made more recurring meetings on my calendar to check in with the friends. Otherwise, six
Oh
months
yeah.
and 1 year goes along. So now I have a recurring meetings with friends that someone is weekly, other person is a monthly, so on a different alternating times. So
There's a bit of Los Angeles there too, because in
I
Los Angeles
know.
it's so hard to see. Right, best friends all over the city, and yet they live in Glendale.
I
Oh
know.
gosh, Glendale's a
Hour and a
good
half.
45-minute drive,
Yeah.
an hour and a half drive. And now, but I love that for the planner in you, you set a reoccurring meeting in your calendar. It's very good.
In
I
in in
appreciate it.
in
So,
in terms of work, so when I came back from, I had a 3 month medical leave during my radiation therapy because toward the end of the chemo, that the medication is accumulated in your body. So first time is probably
mhm.
okay, you can handle it, but toward the end, your body is really weak, and I was at a point that I could not walk.
Oh,
So I
wow.
totally empathize people on a crossroad that they are in the middle of this road because they can't finish
Mm,
it. Because I was one of them.
mhm,
It was really hard to
mm.
walk. So, well, so from that time to radiation, I had a 3 months vacation. I mean, medical leave. Went back, so much work. Worked through about 6 to 8 months, and then decide like I'm going to retire because I hate this so much.
Mm.
Nothing gets done, and I can't get out of this cycle of like part of this is me because I collect the work and I do things and I expect others working that pace too, and things don't go that way. And if I do that,
Mm.
people will give me more work, and that's been a pattern for
That
me, which is it's
that
partially
and
my
that
fault.
if that right, and that lands on you. And
Yeah,
so you retired. Did you really retire? Did you
I
totally
did.
disengage? Yeah.
I totally disengaged in what I was doing while going through the treatment and afterwards is um, there. I started going to the therapeutic yoga class, which saved me
Mm.
so much that it
Mm.
was like 3 times a week, and I built a relationship with these people and getting really interested and serious about considering like I want to do that too, because thinking about how much of help and support mentally and physically that I was getting from this practice and those practitioners. So in August that I retired, I am not going to do this. I'm going to focus more on doing yoga and how am I going to live afterwards, because there's a great fear in me that if I don't work, that I have no health insurance, and
Mm.
the cost of
Mm-hmm.
medical services in America is extremely high. That means you're not going
Yeah.
to get any treatment because you can't afford it. So I was thinking that what can I do? There has to be something that I should be able to do that's really anything but design. Like I don't want to deal with this. Like I want to do something else. So like really randomly, we decided to buy a dry cleaner in Santa Barbara
Oh
out
wow.
of out of nowhere. I know. So
and and that's another 2-hour drive.
yeah,
If you're
and
lucky.
yeah, it seems like it's like self-contained. So it seems like we can hire someone, and then my husband can go like once a week and run things. And seems like don't need to be a full time, but we will have something. And so it was in escrow, and we're in Santa Barbara. um, learning about the actual operation of this place. So I was looking at this really small screen of they do like the, point of sale system, and this is how you do things and things like, so I was like looking at these things. And then when it was done, that we're coming back, and in the car, that I realized, like, I wasn't really listening to this person. I was analyzing the screen and the experience, how bad it was, and the choice of things and why it's confusing, and like what's the cost of this training. Like I was thinking, that was all I was thinking about. So when we came
pulling you back in.
So when after I came back, I sat on the idea a while and thought that I hated the situation at that particular place with my body at the moment. But the real thing is, like, I love what I do. I did not like that moment in time, but that can't be the reason that I want to retire. I probably need just to get away to really unpack what I went through, because for that, it was almost like a year, like a longer than a year at that point, that I didn't really have a time to mourn my body or tragedy that happened to me, because I was so busy. Let's get the treatment. Let's get the work done so we can, launch something, release something. And so I wasn't really paying attention to myself and what it really means to go through this. Like, it's not a story of a triumph, that you need to kind of acknowledge that this is a sad story, that you should actually honor that, instead of like, okay, I can fight over this and I'm going to conquer this. Like, that's really not the right approach, because it's always going to come back to you in a certain form. So I think it was just the moment of realization that, okay, so I love what I do. I am really excited about the things that I do. I love working with these people, and I just need some time to focus and let this thing, just process these like hidden emotions that I denied for the past year. So just acknowledge it and process it, so that's so we decide not to do the business, and so we cancel this girl, and like and then in a weird way, that a lot of companies and people were reaching out to me. I wasn't even looking for a job, but through different LinkedIn and places, so people were reaching out to me that let's talk, see if we can work together. So it was a short 6 months of sabbatical at the end, which when I thought it was a sabbatical, but it was a 6 month. And in that time, that I really, really spent a quality time with myself, and had a clear idea of like me as a person. And even before that, I like, my identity was, I have an MFA in design, but before I had a master's in art history. So I'm not like the traditional way of like design degree all the way out. So I'm coming from a different background. And then I had a, second master's in design, and that's how I get into design. So I was always a little inside of me, was hesitant to call myself a designer, because I'm not like so-and-so in my design group, because there are like the standard way of designer working as a designer for a long time. So I was not
the famous way, right?
Yeah,
the well-known narrative, right?
Yeah, so I'm not that, but that was the moment that I really like cleared my mind that I'm a designer.
Yeah.
This is what I love. So in an interesting way, that gave me such a confidence in me to, talk to these different companies, and then, suggest things. And the way I work afterwards, I think I became a more proactive about really promoting the value of design and why you should have a good design, or why is it important to hire a good designer at a certain stage of a business or for a team. So that changed the way how I deal with work too. I think it was great that I had this time to really evaluate where I was, instead of just pretending that nothing happened and then moved on. Like I did move on, but it's with cancer. So it's like something like new normal for me, that I am a cancer survivor. These are the things that now I look at different. So it feels like my life became richer after the experience.
Right. Oh my gosh. And none of it according to plan.
No, and
none of it from that sense of even the retirement phase. It sounded like it was a lot of series of things, lots of big things of pushing yourself, probably even before your cancer diagnosis, of pushing yourself very hard, trying to plan every aspect of your life, getting this sudden, significant medical diagnosis, all the trauma that goes around that. You keep pushing yourself right after. And then suddenly getting to this point of, it's either like breakthrough or breakdown. I need a break.
Yeah.
And so this exploration again, where you didn't really, it doesn't sound like you had a preconceived notion of what retirement would look like or what it would be, but it was this intentional slowing, or really breaking some of your own cycles that I don't know if they were intentional or not. You were, I imagine it was just a lot of stuff going on, and you're just saying, I just need some quiet. And then out of that, these random little explorations, these different ways that you began to heal through yoga and to look outside of yourself, and this gift that it then brought back to you. How much of that process of taking this deliberate and intentional time for yourself, how much of that is part of your approach now when you work with other people? Do those things come up a lot as well? Not just here's how to do good work, or here's how to do
Absolutely.
this. How much of that comes up in your relationships? Because you're a boss, you lead, you're a people leader. How much of that is now incorporated into your day-to-day that maybe before it wasn't?
I am definitely a better person, more empathetic, because before I think I was more like a boot camp leader, I think, because this is how I work. You should work this way because, it's about the result. And now I still have a high expectation, but my approach is different. And I am openly talk about in certain cases that it's okay to be a C player at certain phase in your life, because it's just one job. Like this is not your life. So you make sure to prioritize your life. Not saying that work is not important, because it's a fair trade. We get paid, so we need to do certain things. And you can't just take advantage of a company paying you. So there's an expectation to do a good job, but still, you do see a lot of young people having similar mind as I did, that I need to excel in everything. And in that case, that I, try to make sure that people are okay. And if not, then at least I'm not another layer to add to that self expectation. Like I am okay for, C player at times. Like if you are comfortable to be a C player, that's a concern.
Right.
But there are times that you actually need to slow down because there are other things. And I try to be more self-reflective, that I do a reflection every day, every night. I start with a meditation, thinking about what's in my intention this morning, like for today. I only focus on one day a week. I still plan a lot of things. There's roadmap that you need to work on, or lectures you do, and vacation plans and things like that. But outside that, I like to focus on everyday intention, and generally try to have two or three things that I want to achieve on that particular day. And then end of the day, I do a self-reflection of like what was good, what I think there's some things that I could have done better. And I still struggle with things like there are times that the old me come out. Then I'm not always cool in certain meetings, that I would argue and attack people in certain cases, and then I realize that oops, and then I go apologize. But at least that has changed a lot. That accepting what's the best at this situation is a big change for me, because before, like, circumstances wouldn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. You must do it in this way, and I don't expect people to do it,
Right.
and I don't expect me to do it. So certain things I'm deliberately choosing not to do much about it, acknowledging that this is a weak area.
Right. You know what it reminds me of, Claire? It reminds me of that person who is not able to walk across the street, or those times, and where an outward appearance might be, what a C player. But knowing those people, you would never say they're operating a C. They're operating it beyond an A. They are way beyond that because of the other additional factors, the context and the effort that they are putting in that we don't often see. And the planning of wander, yoga, meditation, reflection is really allowing our minds and our bodies to kind of be free and wander, and that there isn't any intentional direction. We don't approach meditation and say, okay, for this meditation, I need to get to point B. I need to get over to, Los Feliz today. I'm just going to drive, it's all about that wander. You've mentioned it, what a gift.
Yep,
what a gift. That was very hard-earned. Yeah.
Yep. So whatever it is that people go through, and I'm careful about saying this because everybody has something that they're struggling with. We all have the challenges in life, and things don't always go to the way that we want, and there are like different kind of problems and challenges, but you can't grade them on the same scale. Like me going through cancer is not any bigger than someone who's going through cataract surgery, for example, because it's my own experience, and whatever it is, if it's mine, this is the largest challenge for me. Like, cataract surgery for someone else is not any smaller challenge than me going through cancer. I think that really helped me to understand how to empathize with people, so
Mm.
that you can't like it's everybody is kind of equal in that manner, because my problem is the biggest problem of
Mm.
all. And it's kind of humbling and also interesting too, that while you're not sure what's going to happen to my body next day or next year, because I'm still, meeting with oncologists, I'm dealing with a lot of side effects from
Mm.
treatment and surgery, but I am still planning for, I need to go to Istanbul because that's my place that I always wanted to go, that I couldn't go
Mm.
because of pandemic, and still thinking about career growth and what I can do for the design community, because you cannot stop being alive. Like
Mm.
whether you're sick or tired or challenged, life goes on. Like you can't
Mm.
stop that. And then that's equal for everybody too, because we get the same one day at a time. And just because you're going through something that you can't just not plan or not work for the future, and still dealing with ambiguities and unknowns, that I think I am more aware of the thing, because no, now I know I can get sick, because I just
Mm.
went through it, it wasn't my plan, but I see that, oh, I can get sick, and what that means is that I may not be able to work. Um,
Mm. Mm.
I
Yeah.
may not be able to go anywhere. Those are all the possibilities that I'm counting in my life now,
Yeah.
that there are things that I can't control. All I can do is just focus on what I can do at this moment. So
Mm.
that's all I could do, really.
Right. Right. Mm. That's lovely. I have one last curious question. Imagine you got to have a conversation with that second grader who was late for school. What would you tell that second grader, that little child? What would you tell them differently than maybe what
I
what
would
were your tips?
act, I will actually talk to that child before pulling the trigger,
Mm-hmm.
and make sure the child understands. And if there are other suggestions, or if there is any experimentation period of time, so that it's not so abrupt and not the shock value of things. I don't know why my mother always did that, but which was eventually, I think it was a great lesson for me at a young age. Like, I am responsible for my education, or my behavior, or whatever. Like, mom doesn't need to go to school, but because whether it's second grader or 52 or 62, I think it's still important to have
Mm-hmm.
this alignment, and onboarding and negotiation, so that we share the vision together. So this is what we're going
Right.
to do because of these reasons, instead of like, I'm not doing it and it's surprised that you're going to miss the school.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. What a wonderful way to reflect and honor yourself. Claire, I'm so glad we got to have this chat. It's just been lovely to know you in a different way, and I'm really glad that you hung out with me today.
It's just such a wonderful opportunity to talk about anything but design with you, because you're the industry experts in design, and we always talk about design and there's so much, but it's just a step outside. And what about life? Like, what do you do? What do I do outside it? Because that really influence how we work, how we design too, because it's our experience of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So true. So true. Thanks so much. I look forward to our next chat.
Thank
sometime
you.
soon. Yeah, you're welcome. Bye.
Bye.